Oh, yeah.
Your life, Commissioner.
Okay, let's get the video up. All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Budget Work Session for this Thursday, October 7th, 2021. It's 1:33 p.m. My name is Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. To my left is Vice Chair Commissioner Gary Edwards. To my right is Commissioner Carolina Mejia. We also have our County Manager and Assistant County Manager, Ramiro Chavez and Robin Campbell. 3 budget presentations within one sort of Zoom. There'll be 2 breaks in between. We're starting with the Sheriff's Office Law Enforcement. We'll have Sheriff's Office Corrections and Pretrial Services to wrap up this afternoon. Each session is roughly 45 minutes, but see how we do with that. And public can follow along on the YouTube channel, either live or through archive. And with that, I'll just go straight to the Sheriff's team. Good afternoon.
First off, I want to say good afternoon and thank you for allowing us to meet in person, even though we are wearing masks. At least we're in person. Before I start on my budget presentation, and I will take up some of my time, I want to first off apologize for how I may come across as easier to say that very protective of law enforcement, and that at times I can come across as being very protective and maybe a bit over stating things that really I believe need to be stated. And a lot of it has to do with what law enforcement has been faced with in the last, I'll just say the last 18 months. Since the incident in Minnesota, my complaint about what happened in Minnesota is that I don't know how they do law enforcement in Minnesota. And I don't agree with what occurred, but it really put a bad light on what law enforcement is about or how we look in the national spotlight. And for something like that, I am extremely embarrassed that anything like that happened in the first place, yet alone what has occurred since then. Thurston County Sheriff's Office has not only experienced the protests and the, if you will, riots that have occurred, that we've assisted the cities in over 60 responses to the cities in the last 18 months to not only protect their cities, but also to protect the citizens of Thurston County. After going through that, we've also experienced the COVID-19 experience, which has definitely devastated not only Thurston County, state of Washington, but the entire world. And for that, I don't get to control all that, but I can say that law enforcement has been heavily impacted by that. By the things that I'll be requesting is because of the impacts not only of COVID, but what we're seeing happen to law enforcement because of the protests and the rioting and the civil unrest that we've seen. We've also experienced new laws that have affected law enforcement in a way that no other state in the nation has been affected as much as Washington State by the new laws that have been imposed on law enforcement, and how that has affected how we are allowed or able to commit law enforcement. It is definitely, probably in a more nicer way to put it, definitely has affected people's reasons as to why they want to serve the citizens of Thurston County and the state of Washington at a law enforcement level, whether you're a corrections deputy or a law enforcement deputy. And we are faced with that every day with the men and women who are not only facing the challenges that they're experiencing at work, whether you're in a corrections facility that is considered a congregate care facility, which definitely changes the rules, not only for how you work, but how you operate on a day-to-day basis in a congregate care setting. And how does it affect the morale of the men and women, not only in corrections, but in the law enforcement aspect? And it is my job, it is incumbent upon me to show not only the men and women of Thurston County Sheriff's Office, but to all of you and to the citizens of Thurston County, why it is so important of what we do. I can't explain why we stay in this job except to say that it is a calling. It is something that comes from our heart. It is something that you can't get rid of. And it is hard every day to not care about the things that are occurring in our communities that we see every day. And I just want you to know that I want to be better at what I get to do as a sheriff. When I say better, I want to be able to make sure that I am communicating to the 3 county commissioners and to Romero and to Robin about the county and assistant county manager, about why we ask for what we ask for and why we do what we do. And I want this, I hope it's an open dialogue where you can ask me questions. I've met with the 3 of the county commissioners independently, and it's been brought, what are your 2 top priorities with the budget process? What are your 2 top priorities? And I understand that there is a limited amount of monies that are available, and I know that there are a lot of requests. And what I want to make very clear is that I don't want to take anything away from any of the other offices or departments about what their needs are as well as the sheriff's needs. Because each office and department is as important as we are to the citizens of Thurston County and the state of Washington. And so if I do come off a little excited, I don't mean it in a bad way. And I know that all of you have seen me get excited, and I want to make it very clear, it's not to disrespect. It's just that I'm very protective of not only the men and women who work for the sheriff's office, but my job is to make sure that the citizens of Thurston County are safe every day, where they work, live, and play, and where our kids get to go to school and feel safe. That's my job. So, having said that, our mission. In partnership with our community, we are committed to protecting life, property, and individual rights while providing professional and ethical service to our citizens. And the one thing I really want you all to know is that I'm really sorry that you have to carry these big binders and go through all this, because I know it can be a pain. So I do apologize for that, because I know that Robin and Romero, I've had to put all these together, and there's a lot of changes, and you're trying to keep up with all the changes as well. So I do understand that. So just going on this, it says funds managed by the sheriff's office on the law enforcement aspect. This shows 120 FTEs authorized in 2020. In 2021, it shows 123 FTEs. The proposed in 2022 is a proposed 126 FTEs. In 2023, a proposed 127 FTEs. It also comes with the personnel costs and other costs associated with it. But I do want to bring this to mind, is that at this current time, 2 of those 123 FTEs are not funded. They're still positions, but they are not funded at this current time. Now, if you will, the third one is a funded position through North Thurston School District as a school resource officer. That position is there. It's a contract that we negotiated, and I believe it's through the end of the school year. And then we'll decide, or North Thurston will decide whether that will continue. But having said, yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question really quick?
You can ask me lots.
Can the difference in the law enforcement total for 2022 and 2023, I see it goes down in 2023. Why is that?
Go ahead.
So the initial cost for us for deputies is very expensive on year one, because that factors in a lot of factors, vehicles, equipment, other things. So usually, that is as a result of, as a request for a new deputy will be increased in there, is usually the result of that.
Okay, thank you.
So, one of the things that I have strived to do in our budget process is work with the community on how we can keep deputies, maintain deputies. So, and I presented in front of you 2 narcotic positions that are funded by the task force itself through seizure funds. Those positions were granted by you, but they are funded by the task force itself. And just being mindful that the task force is only consisted of Thurston County Sheriff's Office and some federal partners. 2 are the school resource officers, one of which I mentioned was North Thurston Public Schools. The other position is through the Rochester School District, and we have half a position funded through Rainier School District. Also, in saying that about Rainier also provides or pays for 2 deputies. After all that, we also negotiated with county roads to have a deputy funded through them to pay for a county roads deputy. So all in all, it's 7.5 positions that are basically not reliant on, they were approved by the commission, the positions, but they are funded by separate entities. So, and also on this same page are sheriff's special programs and interlocal drug enforcement.
Can I ask you a question on?
Yes, sir.
So like just example of the, I know it's different in Rainier because it's half, but let's just take the North Thurston School Resource Officer. You were saying that, you know, they might make, because I know the schools are looking at their resource officers. If they decided, we don't want school resource officers, is that a loss to your department? I mean, is that person doing something else that's helpful to you besides what it does on the campuses? Or would that be kind of like, well, they don't want it, doesn't affect sheriff's office in any other way?
It does affect us, and the fact is that individual or that position falls back to positions that we haven't filled, our vacancy positions that we currently have. Right now, for the law enforcement side, we have 4 vacancies at this time. So the one part that we are aware of is that Nisqually Middle School is being absorbed by the Lacey School District. And so, but we have, I think it's 7 or 8 elementary schools in unincorporated North Thurston School District that deputy does go to. And so that deputy is being utilized for those schools as well. And at the end of the year, end of school year, that deputy can go back to the road and assist us in doing the work of a deputy during the summertime.
So add to that.
Go ahead.
Just one other thing to add to that. So 2 of those positions, the North Thurston and the Rochester, if we lose those contracts with the school, those 2 would be losses of a position. So our goal is to not lose the person that we would be able to fill them into an opening that we have. So with Rainier, that's only a partially funded position, but we put them in the school full time. So for 2 of those, yeah, they are completely dependent on the contracts.
Do we have any other resource officer contracts aside from the 2?
Oh, we have Rainier as well.
And that is based on an overtime basis, is that, am I correct in that?
We changed that this year, so it was overtime based. We've made the commitment to the district that he's either in the district, in the school full-time, or in the city of Rainier.
Okay, gotcha.
So we have 3 full-time school resource officers right now.
But you're right, Ramiro, it was overtime basis, and we converted over because we felt that one person in each school who is more consistent than having to go through the overtime process, whether somebody can or can't fill that slot where that deputy is missing from there. So, okay, some of the challenges, adequate commission staffing levels for, if you will, officer safety. The new legislation requiring more resources for responses. And what I mean by that is that we're seeing now that on a lot of calls that might have, let's just take a mentally ill person. If they call and we respond, it'd be a 2-deputy response to a call, hopefully a 2-deputy, sometimes 1, where a person wants to harm themselves. We could go in there, into the residence or meet the individual, ascertain what is going on, and decide whether or not that individual needs to speak to a counselor, or if we could take that individual, if you will, to St. Pete's for a mental health evaluation. Now it takes a lot longer, more resources for that person. Actually, if we don't see a crime, then we back out and we call for a designated crisis responder to respond. And the hardest part is that we also have to ascertain how that person is or what their plan is to harm themselves, whether it would be through pills or the use of a weapon. So it's one of those things where we used to be able to go there and say, okay, we're gonna take you to St. Pete's. Now we don't get to decide that right away. A DCR does. Well, a designated crisis responder can take up to 2 hours to respond. So that deputy is on scene. Well, it also affects, and I know that you've all been more or less inundated with how these affect not only the sheriff's office, but local fire departments as well, on how we're affected and what our responses are, how it changes our policies and procedures about what we can and what we can't do. And so it really does affect, and it takes up a lot of time, especially when we're also dealing with a barricaded individual, not allowed to use less lethal munitions anymore, based off of what the current law is. And obviously those are things that we're going to be trying to work on in legislation. But until now, a lot of these calls are utilizing, instead of 2 or 3 deputies, it could take up way more deputies just to ensure that the community is safe as well. So we are being very mindful of what the safety of the community looks like. And so we are definitely trying to minimize overtime and burnout. However, it may not look like it on our requests. And I look at Robin when I say that because she sees it and has heard John Snodza speak about it for, well, now 10 years. It is a thing that we are seeing, and I know that it used to be you didn't have a lot of overtime. You always had people wanting to do overtime. We are finding ourselves now mandating overtime every day, not only in the law enforcement side, but also in corrections. And a lot of it has to do with we are seeing that people are getting burnout, mostly on their professionally or personally, because of what we've all been experiencing, all of us. Not just law enforcement, but all of us citizens, what we've all been experiencing the last 18 months of unrest and the polarization of what COVID is and how it's affected our communities. So that's what we're seeing a big hit on. So we are a challenge, body and in-car camera system. For better accountability, transparency, and to reduce liability. Tammy Devlin had sent us a letter supporting body cameras, and that will be in a budget request. But the reason why I'm bringing it up now as a challenge is because I really believe that our citizens expect it now. With the new technologies that are out there, I believe that the citizens are expecting it. And I do believe that the legislators are expecting us to be responsible. And I can tell you with, and I'll present it later, even with some of the new laws about decertification, how it does affect law enforcement and our response to calls. So I really believe that that is a challenge because of what is to be expected of all law enforcement in the future. So,
County Manager, you have a question?
yes, sir.
Yeah, Sheriff, in the last maybe 2-3 past legislative sessions, there have been an attempt to make a requirement for body cams. And I know that you have been involved with the sheriff's organization on that aspect. From your perspective, what are the hurdles that you have encountered for the legislators not passing this law?
Well, me personally, what I've encountered, and we've spoken about this several times in the past, is that bargaining units and what they want to be part of and don't want to be part of. What type of cameras they want to use, what they don't want to use. How does it seemingly, cameras are on at certain times but don't work in a second time or aren't turned on, or how that works. A lot of inconsistencies. And what we're also finding is that there's an expense that goes along with it. And at this time, not every agency in this state can afford body cameras. Ray, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
I think just one other thing I'd like to add is two things. One, the biggest concern I think from law enforcement has always been the PDR concern. I feel like we'll present to you a solution to that, and technology has really improved to assist in that PDR. And there's actually a law that gives us some protection on how much PDR stuff we can release related to body cameras. But I think the other big one is the legislature, in my opinion, has continued to try to push small things related to that, but without coming out and just saying that you shall have body cameras, because that could be construed as an unfunded mandate.
Well, they do that all the
And-
time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's been the reason that we haven't specifically seen that, but certainly the laws are really, really geared towards that. I mean, you'll see laws related to, obtaining statements and some of those other things that it's pretty clear in there that, there is a recorded expectation to that, so.
No, this kind of, I think, kind of goes to what Sheriff Snow was saying, but when I was a defense lawyer in Alaska and the troopers did audio recording, and kind of what you're saying, it's like if you don't do it right, then, it's like every defense lawyer was taught that if there was any glitch or missing thing, we would attack as if, maybe because ambiguities are always resolved in favor of the defense. So we had that tool to say, I don't know if the officer, lost it on purpose or on accident, but if he was either negligent or whatever, so throw this case out because this piece of evidence was in the control of law enforcement, wasn't adequately preserved, maybe because there was the server went down or the guy's, batteries were out, he didn't know it, things like that. I mean, it just has to be done really well and meticulously so that you don't, prejudice cases, which is not what you're trying to do.
Right.
So it's just complex. It's not like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's not like any additive is just going to make everyone happy. It's like if it's not done really well and meticulously done with all of the archiving and good technology and good protocols. We attacked, for example, I remember attacking my local police agency saying, you don't have any cross-examining, you don't have any policies in place about how the downloads are done and who's double checking they were trying to do a good thing, right? But it ended up hurting a lot of their cases. So there's a lot that goes along with this if we go down this road. And I think you're right that we're gonna end up down that road at some point, one way or the other.
Well, just, even when you watch TV
Yeah.
and you see cop shows or whatever, it's all on video. And that's why I say that citizens think that we're all on TV. And we've had some incidents that I truly wish we did have body cameras so that it would definitely help us resolve cases, solve cases. And I think the citizens are expecting that, and when they see how horrible things really are, or what happened to our deputies, that it really is compelling, like you were saying, that it does become compelling evidence if there's something that you can't fight in the ambiguity part of it. And so but I do believe that in Thurston County, the capital of the state of Washington, it is expected by our citizens, just going out and talking to them every day. And some of them are saying, you mean you don't have them yet? And they've already thought we'd had them for a long time. So getting into what I mentioned earlier, 2021 new laws, additional training is required to meet mandates and reduce liability. There were 13 new laws passed that affect law enforcement. 22 of those 13 laws affect all our policy changes and how we're supposed to pass that on to the men and women of the sheriff's office. And not only does it affect staffing, but the training component of it as well. And I can tell you that the Criminal Justice Training Center is not even prepared for it yet. I've met with the director, Monica Alexander, at least 3 times in the last 4 months. And they're not set up yet for all this. So it is going to be challenging, not only for the law enforcement agencies, but for the Criminal Justice Training Center as well. So, okay. So I know that there's a list that has, I think, 13, right, or is it 4?
I believe there's 18 or 19.
Or 8, just to let you know, I know Robin and Ramiro have probably seen them. There's like 33 some policy level requests, both for the law enforcement side and the correction side. I'm only going to talk about a few of them, but if you do have questions about the others, I'm definitely open to that. Is that okay, Robin?
Your tongue.
Well, I'm just letting you know that if you do have a question.
Right.
So our priority 1 policy level request is the funding for leasing body and in-car cameras and the 2 FTEs for public disclosure that support it. And obviously we want to be responsive to law and justice and public safety, and it also meets our initiative for the strategic plan. And the price tag on it is, you see there. What that is that we can lease the cameras. We're suggesting leasing the cameras for a 5-year purchase, or a 5-year to purchase agreement. And the reason why I say the leasing option is because it comes with the 2 FTEs to do the public disclosure, but also we want to do it with ER and R replacement after the 5 years. And the one thing that we know that changes all the time, and not to make fun of you all, but you have these big binders. Technology is important, and it is changing all the time. And in 5 years, I do believe
And
that
iPad is on your future, Commissioner.
it will happen. He's got a cell phone. But anyway, my point on this is that in 5 years, I don't know what body cameras are going to be like. And I know that the agency that we look to get it, to look at purchase or lease to own agreement, they replace them after 2.5 years, and they maintain the iCloud storage. And just kind of go into that, the iCloud part is a huge part. The public disclosure part, I can tell you that I cannot do body cameras or in-car cameras without the 2 PDR people that come with it.
I do have a question on that, sir. If you have a private contractor responsible for responding to requests, and they don't get the job done for whatever reason, who's responsible for that?
We are.
So just so you're aware, sir, so the cloud would be, obviously in the GovCloud, it's CGIS compliant, but we have full control over that data. The company has no control whatsoever. They can't access our data. So our staff, our PDR staff would go directly into that cloud, that server, and get the information. So our staff, just like always, the sheriff's office, will be 100% responsible for being responsive to all PDR
But
requests.
these two FTEs that you're talking about, that's just about managing the whole process, but they're not your employees?
They would be our employees, and they would be our employees strictly to deal with the PDR side of things. So we currently have 2 full-time, almost 3 FTEs that are doing nothing but PDR requests, and we get hundreds of them a month. I think we have roughly 80% of all of the county's public record requests come to the sheriff's office. So those staff are beyond capacity, max capacity for what they currently do. We know that adding body cameras and the requests that are gonna come as a result of that is gonna require us to have additional staff to handle those requests. So that's where the staff request is we know this camera program is gonna bring an additional requirement for that.
So based on what you're saying, Under Sheriff, let me see if I understand what you're saying, is the 2 additional staff in this request is just to handle the PDR or to manage the data related to the cameras?
They will just do PDRs.
So it will be a third party who manages the data, or
So-
the data would just go in the cloud?
Yes.
Yep, so
Storage.
every day the camera systems automatically download into this program. And then based on requests, we'll have to go in and use redaction software with our staff to, for whether it be people or places or residences. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has to be edited out of videos before we can release them.
So in the option that you have in here, leasing versus purchasing, the leasing, $469,000, is that the yearly cost of leasing plus the 2 staff?
Correct, that is
That's
correct.
the overall, that's the annual cost.
That's correct, sir.
The purchase option is 1.3 million plus the 2 additional staff.
Yeah, and so our request, we wanted to give an option for the legislative funding that was provided. So that was our attempt, is giving a purchase option of that additional legislative funding that was provided. We really feel that our best option is an ongoing lease. The cameras would be replaced at 2.5 years. Then again, at the 5-year mark, if this is an ongoing lease, we would replace them then at the 5-year mark, and that would continue that cycle.
So, where does so I get the public disclosure I think of as people outside the system. What about like preparing it for the prosecutor to give the defense lawyers and discovery and all that? Is that somebody else that does that piece of it, or does that fall in the same?
That would still be our staff, and that would be these
You're calling that
FTEs.
public disclosure?
All things related to that. So, and we're actually, that's very common now. We get a lot of PDR requests from defense counsel. Rather than waiting for that to come available through discovery, we get those in the form of PDRs. And so, again, our staff is handling hundreds of requests on these, and we reasonably believe that will be exactly the same in the camera requests.
Okay, and then a question for Robin. I see it's in 2 different places. One is lease and one is purchase, and they're both in the kind of grayed out, and that's because why?
That's because that's an area where you have an option. The board has an option. So
That's why it's
you
gray?
wouldn't do both of them. You would just pick one as a board. If you're going to fund cameras, you would choose which way to do it.
So you're just telling us that there's an alternate?
Yeah.
Because in other presentations, the gray meant it was gonna be seen in a different presentation under a
That
different
was-
funding
yeah,
stream.
then they were gray.
Because I know there is an
I
element
didn't
here that
This is blue
Undersheriff.
as opposed to gray.
The blue, yeah.
Oh, blue, okay.
Is it blue?
Sorry. Well, I understand
Trying to
that.
give a visual, help.
I understand that, but I
Yeah.
guess I want to make sure I understand, Undersheriff saying that the purchase option might be able to be covered by the law and justice money,
Part
because
of
Sheriff
it.
and I talked about that, but the leasing would not be able to, even for a couple of, or none of the leasing option would be able to be
That's
covered?
correct, because the legislation, it's written right in the proviso in the state budget,
Yeah,
that the money must be used on one-time expenses.
okay.
They're very clear that it cannot be used on ongoing costs, so a lease would not fall.
And you heard from the coroner this morning, also was proposing accessing that portion as
Right.
well. So,
hear that.
so there may be another request
But I knew that
associated
this
with
was
that
coming.
one time. So,
Okay.
Right.
And you'll notice, sir, on there that, you know, the ongoing cost, so the 2023 cost is not significantly lower, and that is because our intent would be then that even if we purchased, that we would start funding the ER&R portion of that to plan for the fact that this technology is gonna need to be changed in 5 years. So that's why you see those numbers are very similar as you go into 2023.
Right, I'm with you. Let's go.
Okay, priority 2. Our policy request is to restore the funding for the 2 deputy positions that are not funded. I've spoken about them earlier. What I am asking for is to either fund them or eliminate them and not to carry them. I don't, that's my request. I know it's not a fair option, but I don't have a way in my policy requests and my budget that I would be able to fund those positions out of some other fund. But the reason why I am asking for it is when bargaining comes open, and it says that I have those 2 FTE positions, even though they're not funded, on the WASPIC numbers, it shows that we have those positions. Well, it shows that in WASPIC, it shows that we're 38 out of 39 counties for the lowest staffed sheriff's office per 1,000. With those 2 numbers, if they're eliminated or because they're not funded, we are the 39th. So that's why I just don't want to, I want to be transparent. I don't want to misrepresent what the sheriff's office really does or does not have. And I only feel it's fair. Our priority 3 is funding for law enforcement deputies, 2 FTEs phased in, one for 2023 and one for 2024. Or sorry, 22 and 23, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little carried away. But to be responsive to law and justice, public safety, and our county strategic plan. To be very, very blunt, in the past, I have asked for a lot more. And I do believe we need way more deputies. But kind of like what I said in my opening statement is that I need to be cognizant and aware, and let you know I'm aware, that there are a lot of other offices and departments that are asking for monies that we don't have a lot to offer in this budget cycle. I understand that. And I want to be responsible for it, but again, like I also explained, my job is to provide safety to the citizens of Thurston County. And I do believe that adding more deputies is the best way. Would I like to add more? Yeah, if we had a lot more money, yeah, but we don't. And I want to be respectful of you and of the citizens of Thurston County and let you know that asking for 2 additional deputies, I think, is being responsible not only to the citizens of Thurston County, but to the men and women who work here. And asking for the 2 that aren't funded and the 2, I really believe that that is a fair enough request. And that's what I'm asking for on that, so. Priority 4, the funding to backfill the Justice Assistance Grant for $176,000, and we've spoken about that. It's the Department of Justice grant monies that were held off for about 3 years. We were getting them. They were held off, and that was the amount of money that we would receive each year. And I know that we are working with HR and, is it Matt? Nicole, I'm sorry. With Nicole on getting an EEOP in place. And that is something that we all really didn't realize we were missing out on. And I know you've been briefed on it, but so just so I can give you a little heads up about Thurston County Narcotics Task Force. The task force used to be a multi-jurisdictional task force. Right now, I have one state patrol person in there, and the rest are deputies from the sheriff's office. I have a lieutenant, I have a sergeant, and 2 detectives. We're also comprised of federal agencies, ATF, DEA, Homeland Security. I do have FBI that do assist us on occasion. But just so you're aware, and a lot of this, we're not allowed to brag about how we did this just because of the type of investigations that are ongoing. But just since the beginning of this year, we seized 52 pounds of methamphetamine, 11 pounds of heroin, 57 weapons, 4.8 pounds of cocaine, and 88,300 fentanyl pills. Just in 9 months. That's what we've done. On top of which, we've also been involved in 3 human trafficking cases. So I know that we can't brag about it as far as how we're doing it just because of how the investigations are going. But I can tell you that we are definitely making an impact in Thurston County on narcotics and human trafficking. And the unfortunate part is that we are seeing a high rate of overdoses, suicides, and in the end, my ultimate goal is that I want to make an impact not only on our community, but keeping our children safe from using drugs or keeping them away from drugs or the exposure of. So
I'm guessing from your comments that so the JAG grant, is it specifically to be for the Narcotics Task Force?
yes,
And the money, I mean, I guess I don't have a good sense of like how big that budget, that piece of your budget is. I mean, if the board couldn't fund that, what happens? I mean, what do you lose? What can you not do or without that money?
I'll mention some of it and then Ray will go into it, but 2 of the positions that I have in the task force are based off of seizing monies. And the hardest part about that is that I don't want to make going out and saying that I have to seize all this money to sustain the task force is the right thing to do, because it's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is support law enforcement taking drugs off the street. The part is that I don't get to go up to the board and express all these great cases that we're doing and how many drugs we are and how many people are going to jail. And the reason is because of how people are even getting booked into jail, yet alone if they're going to federal jail. So it makes it really hard for me to say, but right now, are we counting on Caesar's monies to pay for some of this? Yes. Are we counting on it? I don't like to, but I won't, if it came down to it, we didn't have the monies to support it, I'd have to eliminate positions in the task force. Ray, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that,
What is the fund number?
The fund number?
Yeah, is that the 1440?
I thought it
oh,
was
Chief Tom
14.
should be upset with me. I believe it's 14.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Uh,
But the request that we have has this money being deposited in the general fund. The general fund expense, not a
Seizure.
task force.
Right,
expense.
not a secret.
Yeah,
So-
and that's incorrect. This or the request should be going into the drug task force specifically.
Okay,
I have 1470, I believe is one of them, but 1440 I think is the main. I'm sorry, 1440 special projects, 1470
there you go.
is the narcotics task force, yeah, correct. So, yeah, the loss of this funding, is fairly significant for us. A lot of our funding for that comes in the form of our seizure fund. And just the fact that the courts have really not been operating, we have a lot of funding that's tied up as a result of that. And so, again, we have hope, we have belief that will occur and result in funding. But it's absolutely not a secure funding source because, we don't know how those cases will turn out. And so that's not something we can use for accounting, and moving forward. So we have a concern that moving forward without assistance in this fund that we will have funding issues there.
But I really want to make it clear, I don't want to make it about just trying to take people's money to pay for stuff. I want to make it about holding people accountable for their actions. On priority 5.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
ma'am.
can I
Sorry.
ask a question about
Yeah.
that? Just popped up right as you started talking. So I see for the JAG grant, we have it for 2022, 2023, but I thought if we get it, the EEOP established this year, do we not apply for it next year?
It's our belief that we're still hopeful that we would be able to. And certainly if that occurs, absolutely we'll be turning, if this funding source is approved by you guys, that will absolutely be turning that funding back. So in our opinion, this would be kind of a stopgap to assist us in that fund. So yeah, we would not ask for both funds to be given to us.
Just to give a little background on it, this is done through the Department of Commerce. So we have a sheriff's representative who is Sheriff Rick Scott from Grace Harbor, and we also have a police chief that is a representative. And then you have citizen representatives. And so if agencies do not use or apply for the DOJ funding, they try to find other funding resources outside of, if you will, narcotic task force agencies. And so they use it for, if you will, drug court programs and those type of programs that where people are affected by drugs, and it goes to programming. The hardest part about the DOJ grant is that in the past, DOJ has not renewed grants where people aren't able to give back when they don't qualify for the grants. Historically, they haven't gotten those grants back. But because we are here in Olympia and I happen to know the main guy, that obviously I'll go there and talk to him about it and let him know how important it is and what, I really feel that even though it's something that we learned of, I think us being honest about where our mistakes were and not taking the money because it was the right thing to do. I think that us going there and telling them this is why we didn't do it, because we wanted to do the right thing and be, basically being truthful and honest. And so that's what I'm hoping that they're gonna see, is that we need to do it right, and we recognize that we didn't have something in place, and now we do, and that's why we're asking for it again. And we hope that you take that in consideration for issuing that grant. That's what I'm hopeful for. And I don't know how the other task force, how they approached it when they didn't get it. And then if they asked for it again, I don't know what their approach was. So it wouldn't be fair to say they just didn't get it. I know that a couple of drug units or task forces didn't get it, but I don't know what their approach was, so. Anyway.
And sorry if I may, just one point of clarification. My understanding, I just received information or word on, was the reason we requested that in the general fund is that our, that one of the position that would be funded, that by that is actually funded out of the general fund, but is actually, is working in our narcotics task force. So that's where the funding would go though, is to the narcotics task force. I can verify all that and clarify
We
that
can
for
follow
you.
up with
Yeah,
Mike, that's
absolutely.
fine.
I absolutely will.
Yep.
All right, our priority 5, policy requests. This is Robin's favorite, just letting you know. Is additional funding for overtime. The reports, law and justice, public safety initiative, our county strategic plan. I know that we were funded last year for, or this year, for half, and what has happened is that, just to put things in perspective, we've hired, since the new year, 14 deputies. And with that goes overtime, because we're short deputies, because either they're in the academy, they're going through training, or they're through the hiring process. So they're at some stage of the game. And what we are seeing is because of our caseload or our calls for service, we are seeing that our overtime is up. And we are very aware that, or at least the sheriff is very aware, and then it makes Ray aware, that I want to be responsible with our funds and what we're doing with our overtime. And it's my responsibility to be responsible to the citizens of Thurston County, because it's not my money. But what we are seeing is because of the calls for service and the type of calls they are, it is requiring more deputies, and we're seeing overtime every day. Every day we're seeing overtime. And you'll hear that those same words when I do the corrections budget as well. So we are seeing overtime, and a lot of it is because of our short staff and where we're at in the calls for service that we're getting. So, priority 6, funding for retirement buyouts. This is something that I know we've all spoken about, and I don't want to put Maria in a bad spot, but it sure would be nice if we had a place where we could just do retirement buyouts for just one entity, and how monies go there and how it's tracked better that way, and instead of each office and each department having to pay for their own, because to be honest with you, you never know when you're going to have a retirement and what that buyout looks like. And when you're looking at the average retirement buyout in the sheriff's office is like $50,000, well, the only way I can make up for that is through vacancy savings. That is the only way. But then when I go with vacancy savings, what I have, my overtime is up. So it's one of those things that we are definitely seeing not only impact the sheriff's office, but when I look at Robin, we've spoken about this many times, and we know that it impacts every department and every office in county government. And I don't know if that's something that you folks have spoken about having a main place where retirement buyouts go, but just looking at it with both corrections and operations, it does impact us at our year-end budget. So that's what I have for the law enforcement aspect of it. I know, like I said, we had like 18 policy level requests that are there in front of you in your big books, but those were our priority requests. Ray, do you have anything you'd like to add before?
I know, sorry we ran a little long. I know we're presenting after this as well, so The next one should be a little bit shorter.
All right. If everybody's good, let's just maybe take 5 and then we'll
Sure,
reconvene at say 2:35.
I'll stay right here.
With the correction.
This will be quick.
We like this.
Is Chief Tomac coming?
He's not, are we on, we're not on sound yet?
Okay.
His-
We are.
his-
Yeah.
we're on sound.
I think we're live.
Yep, we're live, and we're picking back up after a break with Sheriff's Office Corrections. Again, 45-minute segment, and we'll just go right to the team here. in
Thank
Sheriff's
you.
Office.
And first off, I would like to apologize for going long on the law enforcement end. Mission and partnership with our community, we are committed to protecting life, property, and individual rights while providing professional and ethical service to our citizens. So with the FTEs in 2020, we have 128 authorized FTEs. And in 2021, we have 134 FTEs authorized. And we are requesting for that to continue into 2022 and to continue into 2023. What we are asking for is that right now, I have 2 FTEs that are unfunded. And that has been through the budget process, and what I'm asking for is that those FTEs be funded. Because it looks like we have more bodies than what we really do, or what we show we have. But we were authorized 3 FTEs for court security at I want to call it a new courthouse, but it's a temporary new courthouse on Chandler Court. And so I'll get into those deputies, but those 3 deputy positions are due to expire in November of 2022. So just talk about some of my challenges. Hiring and retention, maintaining an adequate staffing level. So yesterday we had a supervisors meeting with the entire agency. And when we were talking about it, even though I've been briefed on what is going on at the jail, we briefed the entire agency so that patrol knows what's going on at the corrections side. And those meetings really help the law enforcement understand what's going on in corrections, and corrections understand what's going on in law enforcement. And one of the big things that we're seeing is a flex unit need. And you've heard me speak about the flex unit need for many years. And what we are seeing now is that our cell unit population we are basically bursting at the seams. And what I mean by that is that I have a total of 120 cell units in the C dorm. It's divided up into four pods, if you will, or 4 units. And I have 2 units have 16 cells, and 2 units have 15 cells. Each have 2 beds. Well, what we're finding, and I've already expressed this, is that the amount of mentally ill people that we have do not make good roommates. And we're having to separate them all. And we're also, I spoke about this earlier about our violent offenders. We have some very violent people out there that you cannot room with. But I take one of those cell units and we utilize it for COVID, meaning that when somebody is arrested, and you have to be, if a person is arrested, it's because of a violent offense, a Class A or Class B felony, and they have to meet a criteria for them to even be arrested because of the restrictions we have in the jail and the COVID restrictions that we have. And right now, as I explained earlier, our jail is ran as a congregate care facility. So in one of my units, cell units, I'm having to put people who are recently arrested in those units. Well, that's full. And so now I have people that are in our intake area, and those places are not set up for beds. They have a toilet in them, but they're not set up to hold lots of people. And we are full up there in our holding cells, and we are full in our intake area, and we are also now housing our female high-risk offenders and our female mentally ill in a holding cells that are intended for just transfer. Like, they're not intended for long-term housing. And now we're having to hold individuals in our video court arraignment area because of the COVID restrictions and the gender. It's easy to put, like, for our classification people, there's a lot of stress on that individual because they're trying to figure out, why can't I put them in the dormitory style setting? You know, what type of crime has this person committed, and can they be housed with other individuals, even though maybe the crime might be a little high? What is their, if you will, what does their past show? Are they violent offenders or are they not? Can they get along with others or not? And so our classification people are inundated with how to get people out of the holding areas or out of the video area and get them into the dorms. The unfortunate part is that these people aren't meeting that criteria. So our jail is equipped to hold just right over or around 400 people. I think it was like 396, something like that. Well, unfortunately, when you have the way our dorm system is set up, we have 4 dorms, 3 male, 1 female, that hold 68 individuals apiece. So you're looking at, okay, so they can each hold like 136 people. So now you're looking at like 272 individuals just in the dorms. But our jail population is only like 234. And most of them are all in cell units now. And that is really impacting the men and women in the corrections facility because of how we're supposed to move them around. And to be very frank with you, the women who are in the cell units up are not getting the yard time like the male counterparts. And that's what we're seeing. And I don't like the way that looks. And I know that we've spoken about this quite a bit, but it is important that it is on your folks' radar because it definitely affects us as justice staff. Yes, sir.
Sheriff, last week we held the jail resource team meeting, and Chief Toma presented a similar picture as you presented today. And I believe it was at least a desire for the board to go back and explore some options, the options that we presented at one point. So I believe that I take that as a next steps that we may need to take in 2022. So at some point, we'll bring that information back to the board on the options, because we explored many different options maybe 3-4 years ago. So, and I believe that it might be coming to the board.
The unfortunate part is that over the years, that flex unit has gone up in price horribly. And it is very hard pill to swallow for citizens to look at what a price tag like that is. And I think the hardest part is that the men and women of the Thurston County Sheriff's Office who work in corrections are doing a fantastic job of dealing with what they are dealing with, especially during this COVID pandemic and what is going on. Because again, like the law enforcement aspect, what we're inundated with and what they're doing both in their personal lives and professional lives, they're impacted every day. And that's a huge, because right now in our responses for our challenges, we have testing, quarantine, separation of inmates, awareness, and miscommunications. And I would say that the miscommunications, obviously it falls on me because I am responsible for all of that. And when I say the miscommunications is that how are we communicating to the men and women in corrections of what we are trying to do for them during this pandemic and expressing how much we appreciate what they do every day. So that's on me. So, yes, sir.
Just one on that, one of the concerns that I've had, in addition to the cost and everything, and we've been through this, I kind of know where I'm at, but it's just, again, with this legislative session, the legislature is doing all this stuff to try to reduce reliance on incarceration and move in a particular direction, and then to have us, and Thurston, legislature's doing all this, meanwhile Thurston County's building a big new wing of permanent jail space. I don't like the way that looks. It's even though there's a totally good reason for it, because we have this unique problem as to how the jail was originally structured and that wasn't built, but I don't think the public, they wouldn't understand, like, why are we going this direction when the state seems to be going that direction? So that's why I kind of raised this issue at the thing. I mean, anything that gets a solution for you guys, my ears are wide open. We were talking about remodeling one of the pods or bringing in a temporary or using the old space, all those things that we talked about. I've asked, I'm open to anything. It's just that because I understand this problem that you have, that we have collectively to meet the needs. I don't like, females not getting yard time. I don't like the challenges it's putting on your staff. I don't like any of that. But I also don't want to look tone deaf to the community as to why we'd be sinking a ton of money into a big new permanent jail space. It's going to be hard to explain that. If you think building a courthouse is what's hard to explain, that to me is going to be extremely hard to explain.
Commissioner McKee, okay.
Yeah.
First.
So I'm not sure about the cost for a flex unit, but since, Robin, and this question's for you, since a lot of the issues are because of having those COVID units, could this be covered with ARPA funds? So I know it gets difficult
Thinking, I'm
because when
thinking
there's
before I
history
just
before.
say no. I'm trying to think it through before I just say no. It would be extremely difficult to tag this on ARPA because we knew at the time we opened the new jail. The study that we had done at that time, and I'll step back a moment, we hired a consultant, and the part of the task for the consultant was help us find a way to move everybody out of the old space into the new space. And they helped us do that, but part of the report very clearly says that the space for women and people with special needs is inappropriate and that needed to be a short-term solution as we move to build the flex unit. So we have that from what year was that, Sheriff? 2014, 2015?
Well, I would say it was in
2013. Yeah. It predates, we've known this was a problem. With all respect for boards, current and past, it has not been addressed, and it would be extremely difficult for us to attempt to claim this cost as COVID related.
We have designs and everything,
It
and
was always
that's what messed up on that other court space.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time in the design of the flex units, as you may recall, and a lot of conversations, 2016, 17, 18, 19, every year we have had those conversations. So That will be tough to make a connection in 2020 due to the pandemic. We resulted on the need of additional jail space.
And just to say, that was partly why I brought up that regional jail idea that we kind of explored there for a little while with TRPC and stuff. Just because like maybe if we partner with Olympia and the other municipalities, the public would understand we're not just trying to make more jail, we're trying to work it better and meet everybody's needs. But anyway, Commissioner Edwards, you had something.
I guess just to follow up on Commissioner Mejia's question. Around the country, there are law enforcement agencies that are hiring personnel with that money. I don't know how exactly they're doing it, but they're doing a lot of extra things with that money above and beyond what you would normally think is COVID money. So somehow there are, and I've heard the president talk about that certain communities needed law enforcement activities or resources, I guess I'll put it. So somehow somebody's figuring out a way to do it.
Yeah.
So whatever we do, I don't think we should ever fall short of at least asking and exploring the possibility of addressing Commissioner Mejia's question.
I absolutely agree, Commissioner, that's why I paused, I didn't just say no.
Okay.
I want to think these things through, and I'm very aware that other jurisdictions are using the recovery fund money for law enforcement and corrections. The way you get there is that the staff that you hire are doing nothing that is not directly COVID related. And they're short-term staff that's not permanent
Well,
FTEs.
that is all possible, but I don't see one thing in the sheriff's requests here that is not directly related to COVID. Not one thing. Everything is, whether it's buying a vehicle and you have to keep people farther apart when you're transporting them to court or whatever. I mean, everything in here is connected. I'm not saying it's the sole thing, but these other outfits seem to be getting away with saying, well, this is COVID. But they also arrest somebody for bank robbery when they go by. That has nothing to do with COVID. So,
Then they don't charge that part of their time to COVID.
well, I don't know. I see a lot of shaky stuff going on in the world. I'm not advocating you do anything shaky.
Well, you know,
I
please
didn't want to do it.
don't put ourselves in the position to do shaky stuff.
Exactly, and the
Because we
auditor
have an
has,
obligation to make sure that we don't put the county in a peril by having an added findings.
right,
And added findings may not be coming now, maybe coming 5 years down the road, and then we'll be in the position to come to return them.
that's right, and
So,
you
and that's
heard
how
the-
we need to make sure that we balance good questions. We need to provide the answers to the commissioners, but, and that is the balancing act that we need to do, because we have that obligation to protect the interests of the county.
We
as
have to
well.
make sure that we're exploring every avenue. That's all I'm saying. Now, whether that's
Yeah, we are doing
Robin in her role or the sheriff in his role, if he goes to a conference and here's Department X is doing all this stuff and the municipality or the county
Right,
is promoting it and here's how they've done it, I would hope somebody will check, how did you do that?
right,
How did you make that fit?
We
So
always-
commerce,
always
you know,
open.
and
so,
so the two things to that. First, the sheriff mentioned the 3 FTEs who are connected to Chandler Court. We're absolutely paying for those with recovery fund money. So there's one thing. The second thing I'd like to say is, Romero and I went to a conference recently where someone from another county said that they have found a way to charge part of their corrections costs to the recovery fund. And I have a question out to him, asking him, please send us how you justified that. So we are doing exactly what you're suggesting.
thank you. I didn't want Commissioner Mejia to think we aren't gonna dig in as
We are
hard as we
absolutely
can.
digging into every opportunity.
One other thing kind of along these lines is that we were reviewing financial plans of detention sales tax
Yes.
yesterday, and because sales tax is up, there's more capacity, and we were wondering whether we could meet some of your corrections-related needs through the detention sales tax revenue. That's probably not how you propose it, because you weren't, looking at those numbers, but that's something that maybe we can make those pieces fit.
And so, just for the record, I'm not putting a flexion in my budget request, but I do like the conversation. And the reason is because kind of where we're all at this table, it is a challenge. The challenge is that how are we ensuring that everybody is being fair and equally? And where I'm at is that our jail is affected because of the way it was designed. And what our intent is for rehabilitation and to have more dormitory style settings so that we are more involved in the transfer process of them, the individuals being able to communicate with each other and work with each other on solving problems, or maybe being able to speak to each other about what they're dealing with and how they're dealing with it, and having that corrections deputy in the middle of all this and helping them out. And I do agree with you, Commissioner Menzer, selling something that, or trying to sell something or trying to build something that shows more sales, but the unfortunate part about what we're seeing in our community is that we are seeing, and I want to preface it this, we are seeing it because we are more educated about what mental health illness is, what it looks like, and how can we better address it when people are committing crimes. What are we doing to help them out? And the other part is that we weren't anticipating that Western State would shut down or Eastern State hospitals would shut down and how that would look or how that would impact our own community. And so I do like the conversation. It is something that it won't go away until we fix whatever fixing it looks like. I just want you to know that that is something that's really important because it definitely impacts the men and women who work in the facility every day.
Just to a follow-up to both the sheriff and Commissioner Mentzer's comments, the one thing that we're potentially faced with is litigation. If we don't get it right, whatever we do, we might have to do something that's contrary to what the public thinks or what law enforcement feels. Because if we don't get it right, when we come up with that balance, then we've always got litigation that is potentially out there. And we've been in contact with entities that are interested in that. So
I agree.
we just have to do something. I don't know what that something is either. I don't know what the fix is exactly, but it's a potential that if we don't get it right, we do have litigation biting at our heels.
That is a good point because it's the risk.
It's a balance, risk. You always talk about risk, yes.
It's all about the risk and how much risk the county is willing to accept or not. So there's always, that should continue to be part of the conversation of the board is what the risk is. So along what you're saying.
So another part of the risk though is the cost. This is definitely a cost driver because every time the sheriff has to open a different small area of the jail to house people, he's got to staff that on a 24/7 basis, which was never intended. That drives hours and overtime up. So it is costing us more money than it should to have people in those units.
And just to echo what Robin is saying, that holding area the transfer area that we're talking about, that has to be staffed 24/7, and that takes 5 individuals to do that on a 24-hour basis. And it's all on overtime, and that's how we're being impacted just by that part. And it's because of what we've been experiencing for the last 2 years. And obviously that does affect morale in the agency and the men and women who work there. So, all right. I just want to say, I do appreciate that discussion because I like it. So priority 1, policy request. Remove the end date for the 3 correction deputy positions and the law and justice, which supports the strategic plan. Those are the 3 court deputies. I'd really like to be able to remove the end date because I really do not see that we're gonna be done with Chandler Court in the next year. And I really believe that it's gonna be ongoing, more ongoing than that. So I'm just asking that the end date be removed. The hardest part is, of all of this, is that now that I'm in the part of, we're getting really close to being fully staffed in corrections.
How many vacancies do you have?
I have,
I believe we currently have 2 or 3.
so, but the problem is that those 3 people are told that, well, you have an end date if I hire you. Because the potential that the 3 people that we hired will be returning back. And so most people won't even take a job if they're told that they'll be done in a year. Or in less than a year, especially with the hiring process and how it goes and dealing with the 10-week academy. So,
What if we
Go ahead,
extended
Rick.
the end date?
That was my next question. That was my question.
Sorry.
No, that was perfect.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Robin.
Just asking, what if we extended the end date by, say, 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I mean, and Sheriff, please, anything that can be done to
Make it more than a
make those more available. So we have, I believe twice now, we've filled those positions, and then as other vacancies come, we're moving those people into those positions. But certainly, as we get closer to that November date of next year, it will become increasingly difficult to fill those. So you'll notice in the budget request, there's a very, very small amount in 22 for that funding request, and a larger one in 23. And the reason for that is it only covers the month of December in the 22 budget.
Understood.
That's a good point, though. Most likely will be in Chandler Court longer than the end of next year.
and the way I'm looking at it is that even if, let's just say, in my hopeful part, is that I'm funded for the 3, and the next priority would be the 2 corrections deputies that are unfunded. Well, then going into, let's say we do the 22-23 budget, and then we start going into the 24 budget, well, then we're saying, okay, well, Sheriff, we gave you those 3, plus you've got those 2, so what does your staffing request look like now and why? And it would give me more of a challenge to say why I'm asking for more deputies than these. Because in the next 2 or 3 years, we all know that even just looking at the books this year, how many retirements have I had out of corrections? And what does that look like? So there is obviously some vacancies that do occur, because when you have as many people working for the sheriff's office as we do today, we're always having people retire out or choosing to move on. And that's just how it usually goes. So just being realistic about it. So the priority 2 request would be to restore the funding for the 2 correction deputy positions. And priority number 3, additional funding request for training. And it says it's $21,000, but the reason why I'm asking for more training money is because of the new laws that that corrections is also part of now. Because corrections is now certified, they are certified corrections deputies now. In years past, they never had been, but now they are. And so they're also subject to decertification. And for me, what I want to ensure that our deputies are trained up on is crisis intervention training, bias-based policing, and de-escalation training. Those are the 3 things that I really believe that not only is it important that law enforcement go through, but also for corrections deputies to go through as well. And the reason is because they're dealing with it every day. They're dealing with the men and women who are incarcerated in Thurston County Jail. And for whatever reason, we're having to deal with mental health component, addiction components, biases, discrimination, a lot of things that we are seeing with people that are in our facility, and training our men and women up on how to recognize that and be aware of it as well. I do think that it is something extremely important for all law enforcement to be going through. So, this is Robin's favorite one. Priority number 4, increase funding for overtime. And this is all based off of historical information. And like we talked about, we were just talking about with the way our transfer area is being utilized. It's all overtime, 24 hours a day, every day of the week. It's all based on overtime. Because it wasn't intended to be a post. It wasn't intended to be utilized the way we're using it. Yes, sir.
So the struggle I've always had on the overtime is like, and I totally understand, I understand what it is and how it works and why you land where you land, but projecting into the future at the same time that we're, subtracting, adding positions, it's just always felt, it's something weird about that for me. Like I get that, okay, so last year you were 866, your budget at 470, so if we add the 437, that would meet what you had last year, roughly.
Sure.
But if the board funds the 2 positions that you haven't had that were cut, would that help? Is that gonna help? Is that gonna reduce the overtime? You know what I mean? There's a lot of moving pieces, and just to throw the number out there, because in an ideal world, I would imagine in an ideal world, you'd always have an overtime budget, right? Even if you were fully staffed, there's always gonna be stuff that happens.
Yeah.
But it would be probably quite a bit less. I would imagine you're high because you haven't been adequately staffed on both sides of the ledger. So there's some point that we're trying to angle toward where your overtime is not 0, it's just what it needs to be for a fully staffed sheriff's department for your size and et cetera. So just trying to, and then we've got COVID, there's so many weird things that happened in 2020 with COVID, and you're having, in one sense, you had less people coming in, but in another sense, you had more challenges and separations and stuff. So it's just really hard for me to know where to land, for me as a commissioner to land on this particular item. So I don't know, I'm not really asking a question, I'm just wanting to share with you the way I think about it.
You pretty much so answered the question in one response, is that, am I hopeful that the 2 additional bodies are gonna make a difference in overtime? Absolutely. And the part is that, like I said earlier, it's not my money. It's taxpayer money, and I wanna be responsible not only to you 3 and Robin and Romero, but I also wanna be responsible to the citizens. And if I've got this outrageous overtime budget, I should be able to explain it to you folks as to why it is that it's that high. And right now I'm explaining that I have 5 people that are on overtime just for one area that we did not anticipate having to be because of whether it's COVID or whether it's the mental health issues that we're facing. Those are things that we didn't see happening. Now, the reason why I want the bodies back is because I do believe that those bodies will make a difference in what my overtime looks like. Now, how big of a difference? I couldn't tell you, but do I believe that having the three court deputies and the 2 deputies that I'm asking for, do I believe that's gonna make a difference? Yes. I believe it already has made a difference, at least the 3 court deputies. But asking for the 2 bodies is something that I really do believe will make a dent in the overtime. I just couldn't tell you how much it is. Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but would this qualify for ARPA since, especially with the overtime that's being used and you know, in the transfer facility, and they're on overtime, it's you said five corrections officers that are there that are on overtime, or at least the people that are in the COVID cells. If not fully, can it be partially covered by ARPA?
We could look at that. I think that the sheriff's number one priority with the deputies at Chandler Court is an easy yes for recovery fund money. Looking at the overtime is a much more difficult conversation, and I can look into it and we can have a conversation with the sheriff about how much of this truly is related to COVID. And again, I'm reaching out to, do you remember which county?
I think it was,
It's in my notes somewhere,
it's,
but wherever it
the
was.
county next to Stevens.
Yeah, there you go. We're reaching out to the other county who talked about how they're doing this to see how, and then I'll be talking to the sheriff's office
Any
about
talking
that.
about-
So we're looking for ways, if for every single ask, I'm looking.
But also, cumulative to the ARPA funds, you know, the detention sales tax funds. You saw the 10-year financial plan yesterday.
Yep.
I think there's some opportunities there.
That's a good opportunity to me because it's ongoing and it could potentially be sustainable for your team.
Because, you know, that's the, even if we find a way to, you know, the ARPA funds to fund some of this has an end date of December 2024.
Right.
And that poses an issue on the ongoing.
But I think that the much greater part of this conversation that bears some analysis is the, going back to Commissioner Mintzer's point, that when you add FTEs, you should see overtime go down. However, the sheriff's in a unique position with having to stand up posts in areas that were never staffed. So there's some odd drivers going on here. But, you know, in the models that both Denise and I saw in Department of Corrections, whenever you add FTEs in a 24/7 facility, the overtime should go down. So, I mean, we can certainly look at that. We'll look about how to fund it, but the bigger question is how much do we really need to fund?
Right, and I
This is
really
my
would like to
favorite.
say that if this COVID wasn't here and we had some of these mental health challenges not present, it'd look a lot different, obviously. But it is what we are dealing with today. I pray that it's not like this next year, but that's a very huge prayer, so.
We got 10 minutes because.
Okay, I only got one more thing.
Okay, cool. Just letting you know.
All right, okay. Policy level, or priority 6, funding for leave buyouts, or wait a minute, sorry, 5, I apologize. Funding for purchase of a jail transport vehicle. And this is basically for Chandler Court. It's to support, obviously, court operations because Chandler Court does not operate the same as Building 2. So they're operating on 2 different schedules, 2 different things going on, and a lot more transporting going on between the 2 courts. So we're definitely in the need of a transport vehicle.
And that's directly because of COVID.
See, that may be a good
That we
opportunity for
could do.
sure.
Yes, we could absolutely do a
One
vehicle.
time, related to COVID,
Yep,
yeah.
that's easy.
Okay, priority 6. This is Robin's favorite too. Funding for leave buyouts at retirement for $90,258.
We're working on the pool here.
Again, I'm just talking about what we're experiencing. Not that I have an old workforce, but our workforce, we over half our population, or half our staff now or brand new with less than 10 years. But the other half have been here over 25 years, who were hired by Commissioner Edwards. So they're looking at wanting to move on to whatever they want to move on to. And so we are definitely starting to see that more and more with corrections, more so than what we've seen in the past. It's just, I think it's a good thing. It's just I want to be able to support them and be able to, again, going down the road of, it'd really be nice if it was all in one place so that we can just, whatever money's got to go to that one particular place, however it works. But then it gives the commission and the county managers a better perspective of what retirement buyouts look like and how they affect county government. That's how I look at it.
You know, I'd even stretch that just a little bit. When you have folks that turn in a resignation, see if you can't help them write that resignation and say, I'm not working here with COVID anymore, I've had it.
And then we could fund leave buyout with recovery fund.
Can I add one more thing, sir, real quick?
Yes, sir.
Apologize, I know time's short. So you'll see an item on both the law enforcement and corrections that's related to wage adjustments for support staff based on a market study. So our staff at the Sheriff's Office and HR spent a lot of time on our non-commissioned positions doing job reclassifications for all of those. This has been before you one other time, but it had gotten pushed down the road. So we did those job reclassifications. We worked with HR and did a job salary study. That market study came out with, it was only able to find, basically only able to cover 3 of those classifications. The other ones are gonna be covered at a later time. But those are on our request here, and you guys will be provided, I believe next Tuesday, our HR and the Sheriff's Office will provide you a briefing on that, and what those market studies showed as far as the additional salary increases for those classifications. So
Actually, I have it scheduled for October 19th.
okay.
Just you may recall, commissioners, HR came with an MOU. They really got to the point of, and the conversation with the board is, do we really want to sign that MOU at this point? Not only it will be a budget decision coming up. That is what Undersheriff is explaining to you. Is we reach an agreement with those individuals. I think
It's 3 classifications, sir.
classifications. But reaching an agreement, it was predicated on a salary adjustment. They may be part of your budget decisions. So now this is the time that we'll bring in October 19th, the whole package for you to consider.
Tuesday?
The 19th for agenda setting.
Sorry, yeah, I was incorrect about Tuesday. It'll be the 19th. We'll present that to you.
Okay, sounds
So
good.
I just want to end this by, I do appreciate your time and your indulgence on this I know that, like when I look at your stack of books, you do have a lot of decisions to make. I just want you to know that the stuff that I presented to you is again, not my money. I understand that it's the taxpayer money. And I want to be as transparent as I can. And I just want you to know that I wouldn't ask for it if I didn't believe that it was necessary for the Thurston County Sheriff's Office. But I just want to say I do appreciate your time, and I do like the engagement and the questions and the conversations. And then I'll just apologize for picking on Robin, because we talked a lot about overtime. We talked a lot about leave buyouts. So we have spoken about that a long time, and we've also talked a lot about the flex unit. And I just want you to know that I do appreciate all of your support, and thank you for everything that you guys are all doing for entire county government, not just the Sheriff's Office.
We have a long history working on these things together, Sheriff, and
Yes,
I
we do.
appreciate the working relationship that we have.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. We'll be back with pretrial services in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're back to the third and final session of the October 7th, 2021 budget work session for the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners. We're picking up with pretrial services. We have our Director of Pretrial Services, Marianne Clear. And Marianne, you're up.
Good afternoon, commissioners and everyone. Thank you for having me.
Marianne, can you hear us?
I can. Can you not hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. I actually changed computers so that I was having audio issues with my new computer, so I switched to this one. So do I need to share my screen for you to see my budget presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will do that. I do have it up and ready. Is it visible to you?
I think it's coming. Give us a second.
It's black. You're at the top, like it's showing us something, but it's not quite showing us anything. What does it say?
Do you have all the screens on your computer?
I see the screen. It says I'm screen sharing and it just has, it's in.
What does ours say? I don't have my glasses.
It's like it's in process. It says Marianne Clear has started screen sharing, but it's not sharing yet.
Okay.
Why don't you stop and start it again, and let's see if that will shake it loose.
Okay.
We do have the slides in the binder, so if that's what we have to do, that's fine.
Yeah.
There we
Yay,
go.
there it
There you
is.
go.
We're good? Okay, perfect. How do I get? There we go. So I'm Marianne Clear. I'm our Director for Pretrial Services. This is the budget presentation. It's now just after 3:30, thanks to the technical difficulties. Pretrial Services. Our goal and our mission is to maximize public safety, court appearance, and pretrial release. I have 3 units in my department. We do screening, supervision, and diversion. Our screening department was able to expand to universal screening over this past year. Universal screening is one of the elements of a high-functioning pretrial service agency that is from the National Institute of Corrections and the Pretrial Services National Association. That has been a goal of pretrial services since I started here in December of 2016. I hope to celebrate my 5 years with the county coming up in this next December. And with the supervision, whenever anyone is ordered to supervision by the court, either Superior Court or District Court, then we monitor that individual for the period of time until they have case resolution. The diversion program started in 2019 and expanded to District Court at the end of last year and to pre-charge diversion just this year in 2021. We make our recommendations for conditions of release for both prosecution, defense, and to the courts. And so we are serving all of the criminal justice partners. We partner with our community-based partners, and my diversion staff are the ones who are certified with doing the needs assessments, and that helps us prepare for the level of service that we should be monitoring them, and then doing a handoff and referral for individuals. These are the numbers for 2020, 2021. You can see that there was a growth in my department. That is the expansion to district court which allows us to do the universal screening, what I had mentioned earlier as the universal screening that was accomplishing one of the initiatives in our county strategic plan, and also to expand our diversion program. In 2022, I have requested an additional staff person, which you see would be 11 FTEs for the program, and then the same in 2023. The challenges that we run into with pretrial services, with the same with other partners having COVID as the backlog and with the Blake decision, but in general, to go higher up and to a bigger picture in general, the populations that we are serving in the criminal justice system, they identify a lot of needs for us as we are working with individuals. The main goal for pretrial services is to help individuals ensure that they are reappearing for their court appearances and not obtaining any warrants or earning any warrants, and to make sure that they don't have any new additional charges to the best of our ability. And we work with all of our partners that are here in the criminal justice system, as well as our community service agencies that are here in our community. Their behavioral health needs, as well as other identified needs on their life domains. And with respect to those needs assessments, we find that we end up doing multiple referrals to agencies that are across the community. And we had looked at and identified a resource hub, and that is the source of my proposal today, is to have a program manager that would be able to manage and coordinate the resource hub. That would be for the entire county and all of the programs, not just the pretrial services department. All of the justice impacted individuals to be able to have access to the resources and have our community partners be located in one place to minimize the barriers that individuals have in accessing our partners. So instead of having to go all over the county, we would have a one-stop shop, if you will. So that has been the purpose of this request, is not just to serve my department and the individuals that my department serves, but those of drug court, mental health court, and those who are not served by the therapeutic courts and other options, but those within the system. We currently have about 600 individuals that my department is supervising and monitoring in the community, in addition to all of the other individuals.
I have a question, Mary Ann.
Yes.
So this is TST proposed to be a TST funding source, and is that something that has gone through the TST committee at any point, or how does that work in terms of their support for this, or how does it fit into their other priorities?
Yes, we did meet with the TST advisory committee, as did all of the other TST funded programs, and did a presentation in addition to what the diversion program is that I have on this specific request. And you'll hear from Carrie Hennon, I believe it's next week, that she'll report to you on that. They were interested and supportive of the resource hub position. They do believe it's a good idea. One of the compliments that they gave pretrial services and our diversion program were the trainings that we have attended and the way that we have set up our program to be inclusive. We've done a lot of work for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I had said earlier that we want to make sure that the resource hub would be a low barrier. I think that is important. And I think the advisory committee was recognizing that the resource hub's goal would be to increase access. And so that was something that they had been supportive of. We had discussed the similarities to the community court that Olympia has. One of the things that while we were getting our pre-charge program off the ground, I have been utilizing one of my diversion officers to help with some of the foundational work to plan the resource hub, and she has had some experience with the Olympia Community Court. And so there are some similarities with respect to the planning. But the TST Advisory Committee had been very supportive of this idea.
So we'll see this with Carrie next week?
Yes, you'll hear that from Carrie.
Okay, perfect. Anything else from the board?
I guess I'd just like to, compliment Marianne, I think, about the fact we face a lot of challenges in the criminal justice component that we're trying to fund. And one of the big issues is liability surrounding jail population. And since you and your crew have been here, you have alleviated much of the problems that we would normally see, and thus helped us reduce jail capacity, and that helps us on our exposure on liability. So, I mean, I know that's a little much as far as how this all fits together for the public, but you are an integral part of the solution to this problem that we're dealing with. And I want to compliment you on that, on your hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner Edwards. I really appreciate that, but I don't feel as though I can take that credit all by myself. I do have a pretrial services governing board, and there are multiple stakeholders on the governing board, and I work in collaboration with multiple other stakeholders, with prosecuting attorney's office, for example, to get the diversion program off the ground. And even the pre-charge, you would think that the pre-charge program would be specific to just my department and the prosecuting attorney's office, but we've also had public defense at the table, just recognizing how the program is working, looking at the Center for Effective Public Policy and the technical assistance that we've had through APPR. They've said that having public defense at the table as you set up your program is key to making it successful from the get-go. And so I do appreciate all of the partners and how supportive they have been. And I'll also note that Ramiro is on the governing board, and he's been very integral in making sure that we get things set up in the way that they should be. So with respect to pretrial services, it's been a lot of work over the last 5 years. And there are a lot more things that the pretrial services department can do. We've been working very diligently, but it does take time. We can't do everything all at once. But in the county strategic plan, our risk assessment is there as well, and our validation should be back in the next weeks. I think I can count them on both hands, the number of weeks that our validation should be back. And I think that we'll be able to start working towards a lot of the goals that we have. So thank you. I greatly appreciate your compliment, but I would like to share that with others.
County Manager.
I'd like to build on Commissioner Edwards' comments. And reflecting back on December 2019, when you interviewed for the position, and we embarked on a journey the journey as to how we can build a pretrial services program here in Thurston County. It's gonna be 5 years, and again, looking back, as Commissioner Edwards stated, you have done an incredible job in bringing the pretrial services program to the level that we are. And I also see incredible opportunities here, whereas in the near future, as to how the pretrial services can evolve in something more than just pretrial services. And that discussions will be coming up, but without losing this opportunity to say thank you for everything we have done in bringing this program to the level that we are, and perhaps more opportunities to come. Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that.
Anything else, Marianne, or are we done?
If I've answered all of your questions and provided all of the information that you need to make decisions, I don't think I have anything further.
Okay, awesome, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Short and sweet, thank you.
Thank you. If anything comes up, don't hesitate to ask.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a good day.
For that to close there.
Well, we are now, you just didn't do.
Oh, sorry, geez, I forgot to, I'm sorry.
Okay, here, though.